we have the right to inhabit our land, to use our land.
Our culture is about sustaining that relationship with the plants, the animals, in a forest.
I did start drawing a lot in the residential school, really not knowing my culture and traditions.
And I'm very proud to be here today. My name is Halos, and this is my Swiya.
Welcome to Voices of Shishalh, and today we're coming to you from the mountaintops. We're about 5,000 feet overlooking Sechelt and the valley, and overlooking the seas and waterways. It's probably the most beautiful place on earth, and it has a name, this mountain we're on.
Yeah, Curcil.
Curcil Mountain. Today's show is going to be a little bit somber in as much as we've got some issues that need to be spoken of, and they have been spoken of at a national level. And Chief, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission went on for 6 years. It had 7,000 interviews. It basically underlined 94 recommendations for the government to follow. And as it stands now, is there anybody going to implement them? There's an election coming up in October. Have you heard?
Yes, and we think that the judge, the way he's handed down his decision, will have to force the government to bring forth reconciliation to the day scholar case.
And Garry Feschuk, who's our councillor and former chief, actually went on invitation to Ottawa, and he was invited to speak in front of the people who had gathered on the day the report came down. This report that took 6 years. So let's go to Ottawa, where Garry's speaking, and let's hear his version, his story, and how he describes the anguish of the day scholars.
Itukwail, Amash, Ukmisiaya, Akasta, Hakanaktan Squish, Onumps Chalap, Ukmisiaya. We now recognize that it was wrong to separate children from rich and vibrant cultures and traditions, that it created a void in many lives and communities, and we apologize for having done this. We now recognize in separating children from their families, we undermine the ability of many to adequately parent their own children and sowed the seeds for generations to follow. We apologize for having done this. We now recognize that far too often these institutions gave rise to abuse or neglect and were inadequately controlled. And we apologize for failing to protect you. Not only did you suffer these abuses as children, but as you became parents, you were powerless to protect your own children from the suffering from the same experiences, and for this we are sorry. The burden of this experience has been on your shoulders for far too long. The burden is properly ours as a government, as a country. This is a section from the apology from the Prime Minister. I used this in my affidavit when we went before the courts. If they were sincere about this apology, we wouldn't have to be going to court to seek redress for the day scholars who are left out of the process altogether.
We're going to push harder. More doors are going to be opened, and we're going to look at, continue to seek redress for our people. And it's a human rights issue. It's a human rights issue that impacts not only the Sechelt and the Kamloops, it impacts every First Nation from coast to coast in this country.
We've teamed with Kamloops to actually champion this cause because every community meeting we go to, our community want to know what's happening to the day scholars who are left out of the process, and we gave them our word that we would try to see this right to the end to seek that justice for the day scholars.
You're not only doing it on behalf of your citizens and your nation and membership, but all of the First Nations people that have endured that suffering. They did attend, and it really is a cultural genocide.
Yeah.
And the Crown has an obligation to respond and respect and to deal with that issue. You know, it's outstanding. If the political strategy doesn't work, then you also have to look at the legal strategy, you know, to bring about justice and to deal with this issue. So I commend you for your leadership on that, and as well Chief Shane Goffredson on the Day Scholar class action suit.
So it may take a while, but we're moving in the right direction, and hopefully one day we can stand up and say our people are totally healed. Now we're seeking redress through the courts for the day scholars. We've given that commitment, and we are going to go right to the end, and we seek that justice for our day scholars. We even started a webpage for people to get involved, and it's called justicefordayscholars.com, and it'll be active before we leave Ottawa and head our way back home. Every nation that had a school in their community and they had day scholars, they have an opportunity to opt in. We do have an opt-in model. That's why our information is getting out there more and more. While we're here in Ottawa, we're going to start meeting with some government leaders to get that message to them. I was appalled when I asked our lawyers to read out a section of the apology from the Prime Minister, and the lawyer stood up. That's not what the Prime Minister meant. Well, what did he mean? Reconciliation has to be more than just denial, and has to be more than just words. Those actions have to become alive. That's one of the things that has to happen, because these cycles of abuse that happen from the residential schools has gone on for far too long, and we need to put an end to it so that our children will never have to suffer again.
And at the end of the week, there was another piece of good news for day scholars, was there not?
Yeah, within days, Gary returning from Ottawa, we got notice that the judge had certified at 3 levels. And the 3 levels meaning that not only the present day ones, but the intergenerational ones. So the children of the parents that were day scholars are going to be affected. They're going to be given a decision also.
It's excellent. Chief, we've done a lot of stories, and I'm amazed at how well you've adapted to television. And what we've gone is back into our vaults for stories we've been holding just for moments like this, because there's no time on them. They're not that kind of story that breaks and then it's over. These are timeless stories. Mm-hmm. I think we'll start out with the Salmon Festival, because the salmon are very important to you.
They are, because we are known as the salmon people, and we're also known for our generosity. We decided that we would hold a Salmon Festival to share that rich culture with our entire community, and the response was phenomenal. And we're just in the throes of planning out the next one.
You had to be there. That's what people usually say when it was so good, it's beyond description, so let's go there. The Salmon Festival.
Ever since I was about 7 years old on a class field trip and had my first taste of a First Nations preparation of salmon in a bent wood box cooked with a hot stone, I've always really been interested in First Nations preparations of food and salmon. And today is the day that we get a chance to try something different.
My name is Mark. This is Ben. Of course, we are the Foodists. We're very fortunate to be here today on the traditional lands of the Sechelt Nation on the beautiful Sunshine Coast. Although I would say it's a chilly day,
yeah, it's cold.
But we're really proud and really honored to be here with Chief Calvin and Elder Jamie, and of course Ronnie Schuchuk, friend of Foodists, who is the barbecue champion. And they're going to show us how to do it. So come with us, check it out. We'll see.
I'm excited. Let's do it.
It's the first time ever that our band is going to share this culture and our tradition. Our people use this method to prepare their food, and this method was used by many coastal tribes the same way. In the old days, the old medicine woman would prepare by gathering herbs, preparing dried berries, and that's what they used to paste on the fish to give it a better taste. They always knew when the salmon were coming. They always knew which river they were going to come to. I don't know how they did that, but they always seemed to know. This is the way we live. This is the way we survive.
Just getting started, making a fire on a red cedar to get the coals hot.
They started it with the red cedar, but now this is seasoned alder, which is going to provide the flavor for the salmon that we put on later.
You can do this with many different types of fish, but chum is actually one of the most prized for this type of technique because the flesh holds its form.
The cool thing is First Nations on the West Coast had super sophisticated techniques for both fishing and cooking salmon.
I think we take for granted cooking in pans. They didn't have pans back then. So they came up with this technique, which frankly, once I've tasted fish with wood. Oh yeah, anything cooked with wood, right? This fish has been marinated overnight with salt, brown sugar, and teriyaki sauce. Some people just use salt and berries, was traditionally used. Unlike normal fish filleting, which you would do at home, we splay it open from the back. The head comes off, the knife goes down either side of the spine, and the belly's intact. And when this fish is opened, it's the strongest part. It holds it together over the fire. The skewers are sharpened, and 3 skewers go in across the fish at the top, the middle, and the bottom.
The salmon skin is actually surprisingly tough. It gets softer as it cooks.
These cedar skewers have to be really sharp to be able to get through that skin.
We're going to put the salmon that's butterflied in the steak here.
A steak that's been split down the middle like a giant clothespin. And then there are 3 more steaks that go behind it to keep the salmon wide open over the fire so that the flesh cooks evenly. You have to use a thin stick so that it cooks the salmon properly. If it's too wide, the salmon won't cook. Now we're ready to go. We're going to pick it up. Just going to put this on the fire now. Meat side facing the fire to start. The salmon is actually tail top, thickest part down here, and that's partly because the thicker, heavier part of the meat is closest to the fire. It's a traditional First Nations way of cooking salmon, and the results are just going to be fantastic, I suspect. You can probably see what the smoke is doing to my eyes and to me. And aside from the fact that it smells fantastic, I know it's going to do good things to this salmon.
In fact, there's a chemistry to this that's really interesting. Because when wood burns, it releases these aromatic hydrocarbons. They're like perfume. So all of those hydrocarbons, the scent of the wood, the essence of the wood is actually going to penetrate the meat to flavor it. It's really those vapors that are flavoring the fish. And about 3 hours from the start to when it's ready to eat.
I'm excited.
Well, it's going to be fantastic.
Approximately at 45 minutes, when the white fat has stopped dripping off the meat, we want to turn the fish, which is about now. We've maintained a consistent heat with the fire, so now I'm just going to begin with this one. Turn it like that.
Today we're having a celebration and we're here today to share our culture and our salmon with the Sunshine Coast. It's very important to our people to share wealth and share resources. We have an abundance of salmon that we really appreciate. Chum salmon, open fire, doesn't get any better.
Doesn't get better than that.
Here you are. Here you go. Thank you. You're welcome. Here you are. Here you go.
Thank you.
So that's a wrap. Another fun day with the foodists. Today we arrived here on the Sunshine Coast.
Anything but sunny.
Where it wasn't sunny. And we were hosted by the Sechelt First Nations band, where they taught us to do a traditional First Nations barbecue salmon roast.
I feel about as smoked as the fish right now. My eyes are still stinging.
But I'm ready to try
I'm
it.
looking forward to trying this. This is going to be amazing.
It's amazing. The color is great.
You've got some of the outside, where you can see the color that it's gotten on that.
Anyway, again, for the foodists, a wonderful time.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Mark, and we'll see you next time.
That was fun, that Salmon Festival, and that could easily become an annual event. Everybody loved it.
Yeah, we're already planning our next one, but I think we're going to do a little bit earlier. And we're going to set up different venues to accommodate more and more of the people in the community. I think it's going to be a great event, this next one.
Yeah, I have noticed that there is a very strong environmental sense to your people and you. By evidence of the Greenpeace activities that you're asked to participate in, whether they're on the high seas against big oil or appearing with Jane Fonda. And I think that it's always interesting to find out, are you talking about it or are you doing it? And our next piece really shows you're doing it. Tell us a bit about Sakinaw Lake.
Well, Sakinaw Lake was an effort that I started in the early 90s, whereby the species of sockeye salmon were disappearing. And they were threatened that they would be extinct. So Sid Quinn and I started a program to try to regenerate that run. And to date, we can say that we're very successful. And there's thousands and thousands of kokanee or sockeye coming back to the lake system. And that's just one effort that we're making in rejuvenating the salmon in our territory.
I really love this story because it isn't easy to take a wild stock that's been dissipated or extirpated, as Sid likes to say, and to bring it back to life, because you're doing it in nature. Nature has a strong hand in all of this. So when you get to see how they're counted, how they're fed, how they're quarantined, how so many are let go, you have an instant understanding of just how difficult that process is.
Well, it's something that we learned from generations ago, that our people had such rich and deep respect for the resources in our territory. You know, there was no such things as overeating, or there was no such thing as greed. Those words didn't exist in our nature. And therefore, we learned to respect those runs. We learned that they needed to be protected. And it just came natural for Sid and I to take on that role.
Let's head to Sakinaw Lake and the story of the salmon recovery.
This lake is very important to the Sechelt Nation and the Sechelt people. It has a long history. It was one of the first salmon back to our territory each year that provided important food source for the Sechelt people. It was actually listed in 2002 as endangered, and we just about lost the fish, but we've been on a sockeye recovery program ever since. We work very closely with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, both through our community advisor and through stock assessment, as well as our Sechelt Nation Resource Department, to work on the recovery of this sockeye population. There was actually, in one of the year classes, there was actually no fish that came back. And in the past 3 years, sockeye are a predominant 4-year fish. We've had 550 adults return in 2011. In 2012, we had 238. In 2013, we had 138. And that's a far better number than seeing the numbers that go back to 29,100. So our recovery efforts are working. Well, we're hoping, last night we enumerated about 11,000 coho smolts out of the lake, or actually sockeye smolts, sorry. We have both coho and sockeye coming out at the same time. And so far we've counted approximately 100,000 sockeye and about 20,000 coho. Okay, last night we were at Sakinaw Lake for the physical count, and the crew counted 4,380 smolts through the fence, and we're just getting ready to fax the numbers off to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Each week we do an updated bulletin so that we can share our counts with everybody, and they can get updated on our website at thesecheltnation.ca. We're in Narrows Inlet, the Haida Girl. We just spoke to the captain, Tedessu. He's got 6 sets in for about 5,000 fish. He's released 2 sockeye, and he's got a set right now for about 1,500. And there's still quite a few fish pouring in through Tizuni Narrows. The Narrows Inlet seine boats are fishing just inside the Narrows here. Again, there's close to 15,000 fish caught by the half a dozen seiners that are working. We've seen sets anywhere from 500 up to 2,500 fish taken. There's very little bycatch, and the bycatch that is being caught is being released. On the eastern shore, there's a ribbon boundary, 100 meters, to protect sea run cutthroat that are in the area. We also walk the streams, and another record run in Sechelt Creek, close to 55,000 pinks have entered into the stream. The head of Jervis Inlet, last week we had 386,000 in stream. Deserted River, we've had 209,000. In the one pool in Tizuni alone, we've had close to 70,000 fish just in the one pool, and the creek has well in excess of 100,000 fish in it. We just arrived at Sechelt Creek to do an assessment of the creek and the spawning channel. In the first 200 meters of the creek, we're already seeing approximately 20,000 pink salmon that have returned, and we're going to assess the rest of the system. We're at the Sechelt Creek spawning channel that was built in 1997. It's an off-channel habitat that was created as part of the hydro development project here. It's had huge success for spawning and rearing of pink salmon. Fishery technician Jerry Johnson has been counting salmon in the spawning channel, and we see about 700 so far. It's another record run. The work of the Sechelt Nation, the vision of our elders, is really shown by the amount of returning salmon back to Sechelt Creek and Salmon Inlet.
Yeah, we just finished walking Sechelt Creek. We're at the falls right now. We estimated 20,000 at the bridge, and the main stem up to this pool, 10,000, and we estimate in here at this pool, 15,000. So altogether, 55,000 pink salmon.
It's a new record. 2 years ago, we had estimated 25,000 to 30,000, and it's just phenomenal to see the elders' vision come to light with all these fish returning. The work of the Sechelt Nation, Capstone, Regional Power, Fisheries and Oceans, Canfor, everybody working together with the same goal to rehabilitate Sechelt Creek and get the fish back. When we first started back in 1997, there was only 600 to 800 fish in the system, and today, just an excellent count. The water quality, the visuals were good, and the fish seem very, very, very happy. This really demonstrates the work of the Sechelt Nation in stream restoration, protecting and monitoring and assessing our streams, and it's something that the Sechelt Nation is very proud of, the work that we do in our resource department and the fisheries. And this is all stemmed from the vision of the elders to bring back the salmon. We're known as the salmon people, and we're very proud of the work that we do.
You can see the cedar hat that I'm wearing. It's a Haida cedar hat. I do cedar harvesting every year. We make cedar capes, cedar leggings, aprons. We use every part of the cedar tree. We use the boughs just for our cleansing and brushing off ourselves. Even in our canoes, we use the cedar tumut to protect our people. We use every part of the wood itself for our canoes, our longhouses, our paddles, our weapons, our boxes for storage. We use it for almost everything, and that's why we call it the mother tree, the tree of life.
Got a very special attachment to cedar. Obviously, on my Coast Salish side, we've been using it since time immemorial, so it's very sacred wood to us. We use it for everything from our clothing to we build our houses with it, cook our food with it. You know, we make our boxes, and obviously we carve in it. On my non-Indigenous side, I've got a very strong background in cedar, as my grandfather was an old British shipwright, and he used to craft these amazing boats out of cedar. So I've got sort of this dual interest on either side. It's just a stunning wood to work with. Obviously, you've seen the beauty of it. It's got these vibrant colors. You know, it's not your average type of wood. I mean, even in some of these, you can see the sort of, you know, the multi-colors even through the stain. It's gorgeous stuff. It's my main medium to do artwork with.
One thing unique to Coast Salish is the cedar root baskets, because that's what we had in abundance. And being a Sechelt person, all of us were born and raised with grandmothers, grandaunts that would be just renowned, elaborate weavers. And traditionally, when you looked at a basket, you would understand whose family it came from the design elements. And wood took place after contact, and especially with the visitors, the tourists that would travel to the Sunshine Coast through the Union Steamship, would be, they had expressed interest in our baskets, so the woman would assist and support their families through basket making. So they started to do different design elements, and they even took it a step further, that they would collaborate in their baskets to expedite the process. So one woman would work on the structure, the other would work on the bottom, one woman would focus on the body. And then my great-grandmother, who had exceptionally strong hands, she would do the top handle. And these were like, even late in life, these elderly women would travel up the mountains and they would go and harvest their own cedar roots, which you can imagine would be somewhat labor intensive.
The red cedars, it has one story for the Coast Salish people, and that is that once a long, long time ago, there was a man who was very resourceful. He watched over his people and he took care of them whenever he saw that they needed something, whether it be shelter or food. He would go help them or give it to them. And the Creator looked down and saw this man and seen that he was good, caring and sharing and loving. And they said, this is the way all men should be. This is the way all men should strive to be. He said, when this man dies, I will make an example of him. Where he dies, a tree will grow, and that tree will be the Western red cedar, and that tree will be useful to all the people to provide for them, as that man provided for them as well. So that's why our Western red cedar has so many uses. Actually, in the spring, the tips are edible as well.
I'm really enjoying being 5,000 feet on your mountain where your medicines grow with you, Chief. A nice piece to end this was when BC's Lieutenant Governor arrived in her car with her driver and a bagpipe and all kinds of entourage, and she came to view the museum. And what did you show her when she went through there?
Well, our people put on a demonstration of the residential school. All the photographs, some of the artifacts of many of our generations of our people who had to suffer through that era, and she got to witness that. She had a strong feeling of what had happened during that era. I think the exhibit in the museum really is very explicit in terms of what our people were put through. The photographs that show in the eyes of our children that they were in a suppressed state, and they never ever recovered from that. And I was very happy that the Lieutenant Governor got to witness some of those pictures in our museum, and you could see that she had that feeling of total depression as much as our children did.
You and your late wife Jenny were in fact residential school survivors, and it's not something that I can speak of, but certainly you can, and I think you can close the show this day with those thoughts.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it just so happens that my wife and I both attended residential schools. I attended two. My era ended up in a place called Mission City. My wife went to 3 different residential schools, and her form of abuse was intense. But we went past it and we started to heal, and we needed to look for reconciliation. And well, I'm still searching, but I think she found hers.
A kind of a sad portion in history, but nonetheless one that actually happened. And will healing come? It can come. It can come in one way, Chief, that you've mentioned, which is people can start the healing process for First Nations in the October election with one thing.
Well, we need strong, courageous leadership. We need the government to recognize and accept that they need to reconcile with the Native people in Canada.
And if they don't, the people have the power of the vote.
That's for sure. And we're going to encourage all the First Nations to vote.
On that note, we say goodbye till next time from the top of paradise here on Voices of Sechelt.